There is a quiet shift that happens as the years pass. It does not announce itself with drama or urgency. It arrives instead as a gradual realization that climbing the stairs requires a bit more effort than it once did. That recovery from a busy day takes longer. That the sharpness of memory seems to have softened around the edges. These changes are easy to dismiss as simply what aging means. And in part, they are. But here is what many people never consider. The line between normal aging and unnecessary decline is not as fixed as it appears. Much of what we attribute to the passing of time is actually something else entirely, a slow, cumulative response to how we have been living. The body has been sending signals for years, signals that are easy to misinterpret or overlook entirely. And the most important signals are not the ones you might expect. They have nothing to do with cholesterol numbers or blood pressure readings. They are quieter, more subtle, and they point to something most doctors never mention. What if the key to maintaining strength, clarity, and independence in the later years is not found in any prescription or procedure? What if it has been within your control all along, hidden in plain sight? That is the question this exploration will gently unfold. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. The art of growing older. A calm exploration of longevity and well-being. There comes a moment in life when the questions shift. In youth, we ask what we will become, what we will achieve, where we will go. In the middle years, we ask how to balance, how to manage, how to sustain. And then, gradually, a different question begins to form, not what we will do with our time, but how we might extend it, enrich it, and inhabit it fully. This question, once considered the province of philosophers and poets, has become one of the most carefully studied subjects in modern science. What follows is not a guidebook with rigid instructions. It is not a collection of rules to follow or a program to complete. Instead, it is an exploration, a calm, thoughtful examination of what researchers, historians, and observers of human life have come to understand about the process of aging well. The ideas presented here have emerged from decades of observation, from studies of populations around the world, from laboratories examining cellular processes, and from the collected wisdom of those who have lived long and lived well. The subject is vast, and no single exploration can capture all of it. But certain patterns recur. Certain principles appear again and again, across cultures and through time. These patterns form the foundation of what follows. The nature of aging. To understand how to age well, it helps first to consider what aging actually is. This may seem obvious. Aging is simply the passage of time, the accumulation of birthdays, the gradual change in how we look and feel. But researchers who study the biology of aging see something more specific happening beneath the surface. The human body is not a machine that wears out through use alone. It is more accurately understood as a system of constant renewal and repair. Cells divide. Old cells die and are replaced. Proteins are synthesized and broken down. Energy is produced and consumed. This process of renewal continues throughout life, but its efficiency changes over time. Consider, for a moment, the concept of repair. A young body responds to damage quickly and completely. A cut heals. A muscle strained during activity rebuilds itself stronger than before. The systems that identify and remove damaged cells work efficiently. As decades pass, these repair processes gradually slow. They do not stop entirely. The body never ceases its efforts to maintain itself, but they become less thorough, less rapid, less complete. This slowing of repair is not a design flaw. It is simply what happens over time, influenced by countless factors including genetics, environment, and the accumulated effects of how we have lived. Some researchers describe aging as the gradual loss of what is called physiological reserve, the extra capacity that allows the body to respond to challenges, to recover from stress, to bounce back from illness or injury. A young person facing an infection mobilizes immune defenses quickly and returns to normal functioning once the threat passes. An older person may mount a slower response and take longer to recover fully. The difference is not merely a matter of chronological age, but of physiological reserve, the cushion of capacity that the body maintains. This perspective shifts how we might think about healthy aging. Rather than focusing solely on preventing disease, though disease prevention remains important, we might also consider how to preserve physiological reserve, how to maintain the body's capacity for repair and recovery, how to support the systems that keep us resilient. The research in this area has grown enormously in recent decades. Scientists have identified what they call hallmarks of aging, specific cellular and molecular processes that change over time. These include things like the shortening of telomeres, which are protective caps on the ends of chromosomes, the accumulation of senescent cells, which are cells that have stopped dividing but refuse to die, changes in how cells produce and use energy, and alterations in the way genes are expressed. These discoveries have opened new avenues of investigation. But for those seeking practical understanding, the details matter less than the principle. Aging is not a single process, but many processes occurring simultaneously. And many of these processes are influenced by how we live. The longevity paradox. One of the most intriguing observations in aging research involves what might be called the longevity paradox. When researchers study populations with high rates of exceptional longevity, places where people regularly live into their 90s and beyond with good health, they find patterns that sometimes contradict conventional assumptions. Consider the island of Sardinia, particularly its mountainous interior, where one of the highest concentrations of male centenarians in the world has been documented. The men of this region, shepherds who spent their lives walking mountainous terrain, ate diets that would not necessarily satisfy modern nutritional guidelines. Their meals included bread, cheese, meat when available, and wine. They worked hard physically into advanced age. They lived in close family groups and maintained strong social connections throughout life. Or consider the Okinawan Islands of Japan, another region celebrated for longevity. Traditional Okinawan diets were relatively low in calories, high in vegetables and sweet potatoes, and included fish and small amounts of pork. The culture emphasized social support networks called moai, informal groups of neighbors who provided mutual assistance throughout life. Older adults remained active and engaged in their communities. Or consider the Seventh-day Adventist populations in Loma Linda, California, who have been studied extensively for their longevity patterns. Their lifestyle includes regular physical activity, a plant-based diet, not smoking, and strong community bonds built around shared religious practice. When researchers compare these diverse populations, they find common threads. But those threads are not what some might expect. The commonalities are not primarily about specific foods or exact exercise regimens. They are broader patterns of living. Physical activity in these communities is not something people schedule at a gym. It is woven into daily life. Walking, gardening, manual work, moving throughout the day. Diet is not a matter of strict rules, but of traditional patterns, foods that have been part of the culture for generations. Social connection is not an afterthought, but a foundation of daily existence. Purpose is not something to be found, but something inherent in roles and relationships. These observations have led some researchers to suggest that how we live matters as much as, or more than, specific interventions. The challenge, of course, is that modern life in many parts of the world has moved far from these traditional patterns. Most people no longer spend their days walking hillsides or tending gardens surrounded by extended family. The question becomes how to adapt principles from these long-lived populations to circumstances that may look very different. The architecture of daily movement. Among the most consistent findings in longevity research is the importance of physical activity. But the kind of activity that appears most protective may not be what many imagine. While structured exercise certainly offers benefits, researchers have become increasingly interested in what might be called movement architecture, the pattern of activity throughout the day. Traditional populations do not typically exercise in the modern sense. They do not set aside time to walk on a treadmill or attend a class. Instead, they move constantly at low intensity. They stand, walk, bend, carry, reach, and perform countless small movements woven into the fabric of daily tasks. This pattern of constant low-level movement appears to have significant physiological effects. It maintains muscle mass and strength, particularly in the legs and core. It supports balance and coordination. It keeps joints lubricated and flexible. It promotes circulation and helps regulate blood sugar. And it does all of this without the joint stress that sometimes accompanies high-impact activities. Research on sedentary behavior has revealed that prolonged sitting has effects independent of whether a person also exercises. Someone who exercises for 30 minutes daily but sits for the remaining 15.5 waking hours may not fully counteract the effects of that sitting. The physiology of the body changes during prolonged inactivity in ways that differ from its response to shorter sedentary periods. This observation has practical implications. It suggests that breaking up sitting time throughout the day matters. Standing to take a phone call, walking to deliver a message rather than emailing, doing a few minutes of gentle movement between television programs, gardening, cooking from scratch, performing household tasks without labor-saving devices. All of these contribute to the daily movement architecture. For older adults, maintaining the ability to perform daily activities independently is itself a form of health preservation. The person who can rise from a chair without using armrests, who can carry groceries, who can climb stairs, who can get down on the floor to play with grandchildren and rise again. This person maintains physiological reserve regardless of chronological age. Strength training deserves particular attention. Research consistently shows that muscle mass declines with age, a process called sarcopenia that begins as early as the 30s and accelerates in later decades. This loss of muscle is not inevitable, or at least its rate can be modified. Resistance exercise, activities that require muscles to work against force, signals the body to maintain muscle tissue. The type of strength training matters less than the fact of doing it. Bodyweight exercises like squats and push-ups, resistance bands, light free weights, and gym machines can all be effective. The key is consistency and progression, gradually challenging the muscles to work slightly harder over time. Balance training also becomes increasingly important with age. Falls are a major cause of injury and loss of independence in older populations. Balance is not something most people think about training, but it responds to practice just as strength does. Simple activities like standing on one foot while brushing teeth, walking heel to toe, or practicing rising from a chair without using hands all challenge and maintain balance systems. The common thread across all movement considerations is that the body adapts to what it is asked to do. Ask little of it, and capacity declines. Ask reasonable amounts regularly, and capacity is maintained. This principle applies across the lifespan, but becomes increasingly consequential in later decades. The question of food. Few subjects in health research generate as much discussion, confusion, and strong opinion as diet. Longevity research offers some guidance, though it tends toward patterns rather than prescriptions. One of the most consistent observations involves overall calorie intake. Studies across multiple species have shown that reducing calorie intake while maintaining adequate nutrition extends lifespan and delays age-related diseases. This effect has been demonstrated in organisms ranging from yeast to worms to flies to rodents, and evidence in primates suggests similar patterns. In human populations, researchers have studied groups that naturally consume fewer calories. The traditional Okinawan diet, for example, was approximately 15 to 20% lower in calories than the average Japanese diet, despite similar nutritional quality. This mild caloric restriction, maintained throughout life, is one hypothesis for the exceptional longevity observed in that population. Caloric restriction appears to work through multiple mechanisms. It reduces oxidative stress, the cellular damage caused by normal metabolism. It improves insulin sensitivity, keeping blood sugar regulation efficient. It activates cellular repair pathways that might otherwise remain dormant. It reduces inflammation throughout the body. But caloric restriction in the modern context is challenging. Food is abundant and highly palatable, engineered to be difficult to resist. The social and cultural aspects of eating make sustained restriction difficult for many. And for older adults, there is a genuine concern about maintaining adequate nutrition and preventing unintended weight loss. Some researchers have explored alternatives to continuous caloric restriction. Intermittent fasting, periods of restricted eating followed by periods of normal eating, has gained attention for potentially producing some of the same cellular effects without requiring constant deprivation. Various patterns exist. Eating only during an 8-hour window each day, restricting calories 2 days per week, or occasionally having very low-calorie days. The evidence for these approaches in humans continues to develop. Some studies show improvements in insulin sensitivity, blood pressure, and markers of inflammation. But the research is not yet conclusive, and individual responses vary. What works well for one person may not suit another. Beyond calorie considerations, the composition of diet matters. Traditional diets associated with longevity share certain characteristics despite their differences. They tend to be plant-focused, with vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and fruits forming the foundation. They include fish and seafood in many coastal populations. They use meat more as a flavoring or occasional centerpiece than as the daily main event. They include fermented foods that support digestive health. They are low in added sugars and refined grains. The Mediterranean diet has been extensively studied and consistently associated with better health outcomes in aging. Its components, olive oil, vegetables, legumes, fish, moderate wine, minimal processed foods, align with many of the patterns observed in long-lived populations. Research suggests that closer adherence to this pattern correlates with lower rates of cardiovascular disease, certain cancers, and cognitive decline. But adopting a dietary pattern is different from following a diet. The distinction matters. A pattern is flexible, adaptable to individual preferences and circumstances. It allows for variation and enjoyment. A rigid diet, by contrast, can become a source of stress and deprivation, which may undermine long-term adherence and quality of life. For older adults, several nutritional considerations deserve particular attention. Protein intake becomes increasingly important as the body becomes less efficient at utilizing dietary protein for muscle maintenance. Spreading protein across meals rather than consuming most of it at one meal may support better muscle preservation. Adequate fiber supports digestive health and helps regulate blood sugar and cholesterol. Sufficient hydration becomes more challenging as the sensation of thirst diminishes with age, requiring conscious attention to fluid intake. Vitamin and mineral status also warrant consideration. Vitamin B12 absorption declines with age, making supplementation or fortified foods important for many. Vitamin D, synthesized through sun exposure, may be insufficient in those who spend limited time outdoors or live in northern climates. Calcium needs remain important for bone health. But these individual nutrients are best considered in the context of overall dietary patterns rather than isolated supplements. The metabolic landscape. Underlying much of the discussion about diet and activity is the concept of metabolic health. Metabolism refers to the complex set of chemical processes by which the body converts food into energy and building blocks for cells. When these processes function smoothly, the body maintains stable energy, appropriate weight, and efficient cellular function. When they become disrupted, a cascade of effects follows. Central to metabolic health is insulin, a hormone produced by the pancreas that helps cells take up glucose from the bloodstream. When cells become less responsive to insulin, a condition called insulin resistance, the pancreas must produce more of it to maintain normal blood sugar. Over time, this increased demand can exhaust insulin-producing cells, leading to rising blood sugar and eventually type 2 diabetes. But insulin resistance affects far more than blood sugar. Insulin is a master regulator that influences many bodily systems. It signals cells to store energy, affects inflammation levels, influences blood vessel health, and interacts with other hormones. Chronic elevation of insulin, which occurs when the body produces extra amounts to overcome resistance, has been linked to numerous age-related conditions. The progression from normal insulin sensitivity to insulin resistance to prediabetes to diabetes typically occurs over years or decades. This long timeline presents both a challenge and an opportunity. The challenge is that metabolic decline happens gradually, often without obvious symptoms until significant damage has occurred. The opportunity is that lifestyle factors powerfully influence this trajectory at every stage. Physical activity directly improves insulin sensitivity. Muscles that contract during exercise take up glucose without requiring as much insulin. This effect persists for hours after activity ends. Regular movement throughout the day maintains this benefit, while prolonged sitting allows insulin resistance to increase. Dietary choices also affect insulin sensitivity. Foods that cause rapid spikes in blood sugar, refined carbohydrates, sugars, processed grains require large insulin releases. Over time, this pattern may contribute to insulin resistance. Foods that release glucose more gradually, vegetables, legumes, whole intact grains, place less demand on the insulin system. Fat and protein, which do not significantly raise blood sugar, allow meals that minimize insulin spikes. Body composition matters for metabolic health as well. Fat stored in the abdominal area, sometimes called visceral fat, is metabolically active in ways that fat stored elsewhere is not. It releases inflammatory substances and fatty acids that can worsen insulin resistance, maintaining a healthy waist circumference, regardless of overall weight, supports better metabolic function. Sleep quality and stress management also influence metabolism. Poor sleep reduces insulin sensitivity. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, a hormone that can promote insulin resistance and abdominal fat storage. These connections illustrate how metabolic health cannot be separated from the broader context of how we live. The restorative power of sleep. Sleep has emerged in recent research as one of the most critical factors for health across the lifespan, with particular importance in later years. Yet it remains one of the most underappreciated and frequently disrupted aspects of daily life. The architecture of sleep changes with age. Older adults typically experience more fragmented sleep, spending less time in the deepest stages of sleep and waking more frequently during the night. They may feel tired earlier in the evening and wake earlier in the morning. These changes are normal, but they do not mean that sleep becomes less important. If anything, the restorative functions of sleep become more critical as repair processes slow with age. During sleep, the body performs essential maintenance. The brain clears metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours. Memory consolidation occurs, with information from the day being processed and stored. Cellular repair processes operate throughout the body. Hormones are regulated and balanced. The cardiovascular system rests and recovers. Chronic insufficient sleep has been linked to numerous health concerns. Cognitive function declines with poor sleep, affecting attention, memory, and decision-making. Cardiovascular risk increases. Immune function suffers, making infection more likely and vaccination less effective. Metabolic health deteriorates, with reduced insulin sensitivity and increased appetite regulation problems. Inflammation levels rise. For older adults, several factors can interfere with sleep. Medications may affect sleep architecture. Medical conditions causing pain or frequent urination disrupt sleep. Changes in circadian rhythms may shift sleep timing earlier. Reduced exposure to bright light during the day, common in those who spend limited time outdoors, can weaken circadian signals. Anxiety and worry, whether about health, family, or world events, can make falling or staying asleep difficult. Supporting good sleep involves addressing these factors where possible. Consistent sleep and wake times help anchor circadian rhythms. Exposure to bright light during the day, particularly morning light, strengthens the body's internal clock. A cool, dark, quiet sleeping environment supports uninterrupted sleep. Avoiding caffeine in the afternoon and evening reduces its sleep-disrupting effects. Limiting alcohol, which fragments sleep even as it may help with falling asleep initially, improves sleep quality. The relationship between sleep and physical activity is bidirectional. Regular activity improves sleep quality, and better sleep supports the energy and motivation for activity. This positive cycle, once established, reinforces itself. The nervous system in balance. The autonomic nervous system, which controls involuntary functions like heart rate, digestion, and breathing, operates in two primary modes. The sympathetic branch mobilizes the body for action, increasing heart rate, redirecting blood flow to muscles, releasing energy stores. This is often called the fight or flight response. The parasympathetic branch promotes rest and recovery, slowing heart rate, directing blood flow to digestion, supporting repair processes. This is sometimes called the rest and digest mode. Modern life tends to overactivate the sympathetic branch. Deadlines, traffic, news, financial concerns, relationship stresses, all of these trigger sympathetic responses. The body responds to these modern stressors as if they were physical threats, releasing stress hormones and preparing for action. But unlike our ancestors who faced acute physical threats that resolved quickly, modern humans often experience chronic low-grade stress that persists for months or years. This chronic sympathetic activation has consequences. Blood pressure remains elevated. Inflammation increases. Digestion becomes less efficient. Sleep suffers. Repair processes are suppressed. Over time, this pattern accelerates many aspects of aging. Restoring nervous system balance involves both reducing unnecessary sympathetic activation and actively supporting parasympathetic function. Several approaches can help. Breathing patterns directly influence the nervous system. Slow, deep breathing, particularly with exhalations longer than inhalations, activates parasympathetic pathways. A few minutes of deliberate slow breathing can shift the nervous system toward rest and recovery. This practice can be used throughout the day, particularly during or after stressful situations. Regular physical activity, paradoxically, helps regulate the stress response. Exercise stresses the body acutely, but recovery from exercise trains the nervous system to return to baseline more efficiently. The key is appropriate intensity. Excessive training without adequate recovery can add to stress rather than reducing it. Social connection, discussed more fully below, has powerful effects on the nervous system. Supportive interactions with trusted others activate parasympathetic pathways and reduce stress hormone levels. This may be one mechanism by which strong social ties are so consistently linked to health outcomes. Time in natural environments appears to shift nervous system balance toward restoration. Studies show reduced stress hormones, lower heart rate, and improved mood following time in green spaces. Even viewing nature scenes or listening to natural sounds can produce measurable effects. Engaging in activities that produce a state of focused calm, sometimes called flow states, also supports nervous system balance. Gardening, cooking, crafting, playing music, reading, or any absorbing activity that occupies attention without requiring intense effort can serve this function. The goal is not to eliminate stress entirely, which is neither possible nor desirable. Some stress challenges the body and promotes adaptation. The goal is to prevent chronic stress from becoming the default state, to ensure that periods of activation are balanced by periods of genuine rest and recovery. The social connection. Among the most powerful predictors of health and aging is the quality and quantity of social connections. This finding has emerged consistently across numerous studies spanning decades and populations. People with stronger social ties live longer, maintain better cognitive function, recover more quickly from illness, and report higher quality of life than those who are socially isolated. The strength of this association rivals that of better-known risk factors. Social isolation has been compared to smoking 15 cigarettes per day in terms of its impact on mortality risk. This comparison is not precise, but it conveys the magnitude of the effect. Several mechanisms likely explain this connection. Social support buffers the effects of stress. Knowing that others care about us and will help if needed changes how our bodies respond to challenges. Social engagement provides cognitive stimulation, keeping mental faculties active and challenged. Social networks encourage healthy behaviors. People who eat well, stay active, and follow medical advice often do so in the context of social groups where these behaviors are normal. Social contact may directly affect physiology through pathways involving oxytocin and other hormones that promote relaxation and repair. Loneliness, which is distinct from objective social isolation, appears particularly harmful. A person can live alone and see few people, yet not feel lonely. Another person can be surrounded by others, yet feel profoundly alone. It is the subjective experience of loneliness, the gap between desired and actual connection, that most strongly predicts negative outcomes. Maintaining social connections in later life requires attention and effort. Retirement can remove daily workplace interactions. Friends and family may move away or pass away. Mobility limitations can make leaving home more difficult. Hearing loss, common with age, makes conversation exhausting. These challenges are real, but they can be addressed. Community involvement provides structured opportunities for connection. Volunteering, participating in religious or spiritual communities, joining clubs or groups centered on interests, taking classes, all of these create contexts for regular social interaction. The specific activity matters less than the regular engagement with others. Intergenerational connection offers particular benefits. Relationships with younger people provide novelty, different perspectives, and opportunities for contribution. Grandparenting, mentoring, or simply spending time with younger neighbors or family friends enriches both generations. Technology can help maintain connections across distance. Video calls, messaging, and social media, used thoughtfully, supplement in-person contact. They do not replace physical presence, but can maintain relationships between visits. The quality of relationships matters as much as quantity. Supportive. Positive relationships provide benefits. Conflictual or draining relationships may add to stress rather than reducing it. Investing time and energy in relationships that feel nourishing, while setting boundaries with those that do not, supports well-being. Purpose and engagement. Closely related to social connection is the concept of purpose, having reasons to get up in the morning, feeling that one's life has meaning and direction. Research has consistently linked sense of purpose to better health outcomes and longer life. Purpose does not require grand achievements or world-changing work. It can be found in caring for family, maintaining a garden, volunteering, creating art, participating in community life, sharing skills with others, or simply enjoying and appreciating each day. What matters is that life feels meaningful to the person living it. The transition to retirement represents a significant shift in this regard. Work provides not only income, but also structure, social contact, intellectual challenge, and a sense of contribution. When work ends, these elements must be replaced from other sources. Those who plan for this transition, who develop interests and involvements that will carry forward into retirement, generally adapt more successfully than those who retire without a clear sense of what comes next. Engagement with life also includes continued learning and mental challenge. The concept of cognitive reserve, the brain's ability to withstand pathology without showing symptoms, suggests that stimulating activities throughout life build capacity that protects against decline. Education, complex work, reading, learning new skills, and staying mentally active all contribute to this reserve. Learning in later life differs from learning in youth. The goals may be different, enjoyment and engagement rather than credentialing. The pace may be slower, but the brain remains capable of forming new connections and acquiring new knowledge throughout life. Learning a language, musical instrument, craft, or subject of interest provides mental stimulation and a sense of accomplishment. Physical engagement with meaningful activities matters too. Gardening, home maintenance, volunteering that involves physical activity, and active leisure all combine movement with purpose. This integration may be more sustainable than exercise pursued solely for health, which can feel like a chore. When activity serves a purpose beyond itself, it becomes easier to maintain. The built and natural environment where we live shapes how we live in ways that are easy to overlook. The design of our homes, neighborhoods, and communities influences our daily choices and habits. Walkable neighborhoods encourage walking. When shops, services, and gathering places are within walking distance, people cover more distance on foot. When walking requires navigating busy roads without sidewalks or crossing distances that require driving, people drive. This simple difference accumulates over days and years into significant differences in total physical activity. Access to nature matters for well-being. People who live near parks, gardens, or natural areas spend more time outdoors, engage in more physical activity, and report better mental health. Even views of nature from windows have been associated with positive outcomes. For those without easy access, bringing nature indoors through plants, visiting parks regularly, or spending time in green spaces when possible provides some benefit. Home safety and design affect independence and risk. Grab bars in bathrooms, good lighting throughout, removal of trip hazards, and design that minimizes the need for stairs all reduce fall risk. For those who wish to remain in their homes as they age, these modifications become increasingly important. Climate considerations matter. Extreme heat and cold pose risks, particularly for those with chronic conditions. Access to comfortable temperatures, whether through home heating and cooling or through community spaces like libraries and senior centers during extremes. Supports health. For those considering where to live in later years, proximity to family, friends, and services deserves careful thought. Being close to social connections and needed resources supports independence longer than being in an isolated location. However beautiful, the integration of principles, the themes explored above, movement, nutrition, metabolic health, sleep, nervous system balance, social connection, purpose, environment, are not separate pillars of health. They are interwoven aspects of how we live. Each influences the others, and together they create the conditions for aging well. Consider how these factors interact. Physical activity improves sleep, which supports metabolic health, which provides energy for social engagement, which reinforces sense of purpose, which motivates continued activity. Conversely, social isolation increases stress, which disrupts sleep, which impairs metabolic regulation, which reduces energy for activity, which further limits social contact. This interconnectedness means that small changes can have ripple effects. Improving sleep may provide energy for a daily walk. That walk may lead to meeting neighbors, building social connection. Those connections may provide support for trying new activities or improving eating patterns. No single change needs to be dramatic to initiate positive momentum. It also means that context matters. Advice that makes sense in isolation may not fit an individual's circumstances. A person with limited mobility cannot simply be told to walk more. A person with limited resources cannot simply be told to buy fresh organic food. A person caring for a spouse with dementia cannot simply be told to get more sleep. The principles need to be adapted to real situations. This adaptation is itself a skill. It involves understanding the principles behind recommendations and finding ways to apply them that fit individual circumstances. It may involve accepting that some aspects cannot be fully achieved while focusing on those that can. It may involve creativity in finding alternatives. It may involve patience with oneself and the process. The question of genetics. Some people live long, healthy lives while apparently doing nothing special. Others make careful efforts and still face health challenges. Genetics plays a role in these differences, and acknowledging this is important for maintaining perspective. Researchers studying exceptionally long-lived individuals have identified genetic variations that appear more commonly in these populations. Certain genes influence how the body handles cholesterol, how it responds to stress, how it repairs cellular damage, how it regulates inflammation. These genetic factors create advantages that make longevity more likely regardless of lifestyle. But for most people, genes are not destiny. Even those with genetic advantages can undermine them through poor lifestyle choices. And those without such advantages can often compensate through careful attention to the factors within their control. The heritability of lifespan, the proportion explained by genetics, is estimated at around 25%. This leaves considerable room for influence. Epigenetics, the study of how behaviors and environment affect gene expression, offers additional insight. Genes can be turned up or down, activated or silenced by lifestyle factors, diet, activity, stress, sleep, and social connections all influence which genes are expressed and to what degree. This means that even genetic predispositions are not fixed, they interact with how we live. The practical implication is that focusing on what can be controlled, rather than worrying about what cannot, offers the most productive path forward. Genetic testing may provide interesting information, but it rarely changes the fundamental advice. Move regularly, eat thoughtfully, sleep sufficiently, connect socially, find purpose, manage stress, live in environments that support these choices. The later years as a distinct phase. Western culture often views aging as decline, a falling away from the peak of young adulthood. But many traditional cultures regard later life differently, as a time of wisdom, perspective, and contribution that younger years cannot provide. This alternative view deserves consideration. The later years offer certain advantages. Emotional regulation often improves with age. Older adults typically experience less emotional volatility and greater ability to focus on positive aspects of experience. Perspective gained through decades of living allows for better prioritization of what truly matters. Relationships, if nurtured, can deepen into forms of connection that younger people may not yet access. The challenges of later life are real, physical changes, losses of loved ones, shifting social roles, health concerns. But these challenges coexist with opportunities that deserve equal attention. The goal is not to deny the difficulties, but to live fully within them, to continue growing and contributing and finding meaning despite them. This perspective shifts how we might think about health practices. They are not primarily about extending life, though they may do that. They are about making the life we have, whatever its duration, as rich, engaged, and satisfying as possible. A day lived well matters regardless of how many such days there will be. The pace of change. One challenge in adopting new patterns is the expectation of rapid results. Modern culture emphasizes quick fixes and immediate gratification. But the factors that influence aging operate over decades. Their effects accumulate slowly, and changing them requires patience. A single healthy meal does not transform health, but thousands of healthy meals, eaten over years, shape the body's composition and function. A single walk does not transform fitness, but thousands of walks, taken regularly, maintain cardiovascular and muscular capacity. A single good night's sleep does not transform cognition, but consistently adequate sleep supports brain function throughout life. This slow accumulation means that benefits are not always immediately visible. It is easy to become discouraged when changes do not produce rapid results. But the absence of immediate change is not failure. It is simply the nature of processes that operate over long time frames. Conversely, occasional deviations from healthy patterns do not erase progress. A day of poor eating, a missed walk, a night of poor sleep. These are normal variations in human life. What matters is the overall pattern, not individual exceptions. Flexibility and self-compassion support long-term consistency better than rigid perfectionism. The role of medical care. Medical care plays an important role in healthy aging, but its role is different from what many assume. Medicine excels at treating acute conditions, managing symptoms, and preventing specific diseases through screening and early intervention. It is less effective at creating health in the absence of disease. Preventive care, appropriate screenings, vaccinations, management of chronic conditions remains important. Regular checkups allow for early detection of problems when they are most treatable. Medication, when needed, can control blood pressure, manage cholesterol, regulate blood sugar, and address numerous other conditions. These interventions have proven value. But medical care cannot replace the foundational factors discussed throughout this exploration. No medication provides the benefits of regular physical activity. No screening substitutes for thoughtful nutrition. No procedure creates social connection or sense of purpose. Medicine and lifestyle are complementary, each addressing aspects of health that the other cannot fully reach. Communication with healthcare providers matters. Discussing concerns, asking questions, understanding treatment options, and sharing information about lifestyle practices helps providers offer appropriate guidance. For those managing multiple conditions and medications, careful coordination of care becomes increasingly important. The cumulative effect. What emerges from this exploration is not a checklist, but a direction. The principles are simple, though not always easy to implement. Move throughout the day. Eat mostly plants and minimally processed foods. Sleep sufficiently and regularly. Balance the nervous system through rest and restoration. Maintain social connections. Find purpose and engagement. Create environments that support these choices. None of these principles requires perfection. None demands dramatic transformation overnight. Each can be approached gradually, with small steps that accumulate over time. The person who walks a little more this month than last, who adds one serving of vegetables to daily meals, who reaches out to one friend each week, who spends a few minutes in quiet breathing each day. This person is moving in a direction that research suggests supports health and aging. The direction matters more than the speed. The pattern matters more than any single choice. And the accumulated effect of many small decisions, made consistently over time, shapes the trajectory of aging in ways that no single intervention can match. A closing reflection. The study of longevity has advanced enormously in recent decades. Researchers have identified cellular processes, genetic variations, and lifestyle patterns associated with longer, healthier lives. But at its heart, the message is not new. It echoes wisdom found in traditional cultures and philosophical traditions across human history. Live moderately. Stay active. Value relationships. Find meaning. Rest adequately. These are not revolutionary insights. They are reminders of patterns that humans have understood for millennia, patterns that modern life has disrupted but not invalidated. The later years offer an opportunity to reclaim these patterns, to live in ways that align with what we know about human thriving. They offer time to deepen relationships, to pursue interests, to contribute to others, to appreciate the world. They offer perspective that only decades of living can provide. The goal is not to live forever, an impossibility that would create its own problems if it were possible. The goal is to live fully whatever years we have, to maintain capacity for as long as possible, to remain engaged and connected and purposeful. This goal is achievable for many, perhaps most, with attention to the factors within our control. The art of growing older well is, in this sense, simply the art of living well applied across a lifetime. It requires no special knowledge, no expensive interventions, no secret formulas. It requires only attention to what matters, consistency in small choices, and acceptance of what cannot be changed. These are skills available to anyone, at any age, at any stage of the journey. The art of growing older well is not found in any single practice or discovery. It is found in the accumulated weight of small, consistent choices made over decades, choices about movement, about food, about rest, about connection, about purpose. The research is clear, and it points to a truth both simple and profound. The body responds to how we live. It adapts to what we ask of it. It reflects the patterns we create. And while genetics and fortune play their roles, the direction of our later years is shaped most powerfully by factors within our reach. If this exploration has stirred something in you, a recognition, a curiosity, a quiet resolve, we would be honored to hear your thoughts in the comments. What has your own journey taught you about aging well? What questions remain? The Longevity Library exists as a growing archive of such wisdom, and you are invited to explore its shelves. If you have not already, consider subscribing so that new chapters find their way to you. Until next time, may you move with ease, rest with depth, and live with purpose. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.